Today we are exploring how childhood trauma causes PCOS. While I do understand this isn't the most glamorous thing to talk about, we have neglected this conversation for way too long, and so it's really time to become aware of this reality so we can do something about it. To really understand how childhood trauma causes PCOS, we first need to look at the ACE study, which is some groundbreaking research that we will only hear more about over time. So the ACE study stands for the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, and the study took place in Southern California. It's one of the largest investigations of its kind, which explored the impact of childhood adverse experiences. What this group of researchers found was a very significant and statistically strong link between the safety of your home life growing up and how well you're doing later on in life health-wise. So depending on what happened when you were growing and developing as a baby, as an infant and into your teenage years, the research found that the higher the number of adverse experiences as a child, the more likely you are to experience various chronic health issues later on in life, such as depression, anxiety, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, addiction, disease of the organs, and so on. And the last time I checked, the ACE study had been featured in over 4,000 publications. Now, I have been working with women worldwide as a PCOS healing specialist for over 10 years now. And so I will tell you it's very common to dismiss the word trauma, as we don't tend to classify ourselves as being traumatized. We tend to associate trauma with the horrors of war or survivors of physical or sexual abuse. And while those do constitute as traumatic experiences, there are also more subtle chronic stressors that put us into a trauma response and leave us unwell to the point of PTSD symptoms. So here are some common situations that can create this. A highly stressful birth experience, premature birth where the baby is in isolation in an incubator, early surgical procedures and or being hospitalized and pinned down for treatment, parents who are absent or divorced or addicts or depressed or not well within themselves and so not able to provide the level of care needed for a growing child, lack of safety in the home such as abuse and neglect of all kinds, not enough food, unstable or inconsistent housing, being left alone for long periods of time, chronic suppression of emotions in the home, high pressure and high expectations placed upon a child so that they feel ashamed of their ability or the lack of, being bullied or ridiculed at school or at home. And this list is by no means complete, but this gives a spectrum of situations that put a child's nervous system into a significant state of high stress. And as I said earlier, I've been working with women experiencing PCOS for a very long time now. And over and over again, I've heard the troubling times in families, being bullied as teenagers, divorce, abandonment, rejection, loss, big disappointment, depression, mental illness, and so on. And what tends to happen is there are many different programs and protocols for PCOS offering guidance around foods and diets and exercise regimes, supplements, medication, and so on to get relief from symptoms. And more often than not, we do experience some relief from those modifications. But the reality is we are still searching for that complete relief. And the reason for that is that even though all of the health professionals in the PCOS arena mean well, their hearts are really in it, they really want to help women, they're not getting to the root cause of PCOS, which is that unresolved trauma from childhood experiences that's still festering and residing in the nervous system that does not allow us to fully heal and thrive because we are stuck living in chronic survival mode. Now, your nervous system is this automatic, autonomic system that is basically the invisible control center of your body. It controls every function, from your metabolism to blood pressure, blood sugar, body weight, hormones, emotions, sleep, appetite, reproduction, fertility, every automatic function you can think of. Your hair, your skin, your cell repair, literally every function in the body, the nervous system controls it. And when we're really young, we're not able to regulate our nervous system. We just don't have the capacity physiologically to soothe ourselves, to calm ourselves down. And we learn how to do this based on the environment, based on our parents and our primary caregivers. It's their job to help us regulate all the stress we feel from both the external world and from our own internal sensations, which are all very new to us. So we are completely dependent on our parents and our primary caregivers for regulation. And the bottom line is, our nervous system, when we're developing and growing up, needs safety in order to regulate. So this is key. Your nervous system needs to feel safe in order to regulate. And it's not as easy as just sitting there and mentally affirming, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, and saying mantras and affirmations. I know this is a practice lots of people do, and it might distract from a felt sense of unsafety, but more often than not, it doesn't get to the cellular level of unsafety that we feel in our bodies from when we were very young. So I'll give an example of this. So let's say we're young and there is physical abuse in the home. Because we're in a family system, we're kind of in this bind because we want to flee, we want to fight because that's our natural impulse. But because it's our caregiver, we actually don't want to, because we know on a very subconscious primal level that if we do that, we risk death. We risk being thrown out of the family system, so we risk our survival. So what we do when we're under this kind of threat, and it doesn't have to be physical, it could be emotional and verbal, is we shut down. We go into a natural and automatic protective response called the freeze state of the nervous system. So we've all heard of fight and flight, right? But then there's something called freeze, which numbs the body. It's nature's way of protecting you from feeling terrible pain. And when you go into this freeze state repeatedly, and that can be from one incident or it can be over the spectrum of your childhood, which is very typical, the system goes into this conservation mode, which is a low life force energy, low metabolism, low oxygen state. But as children, when we are in this adverse experience for our whole childhood, we stay stuck in this state. And the trouble is that your nervous system in that survival state will then make your organ systems also slow down or shut down. This is how poor health and healing and nervous system dysregulation begins, because the organ systems won't act the way they're supposed to. They won't pump and flow the way they're supposed to. They won't repair like they're supposed to. In this survival state, the body gets really good at producing lots of stress chemicals, which wreaks havoc on the body's cells and tissues. It also weakens the immune system. It promotes inflammation, and it's toxic to the brain. So all of the hormone signals in the body get confused. So in this cycle of high stress, shutdown, and excess stress chemicals, this puts massive strain on the body, which is the culprit behind childhood trauma, and PCOS is the byproduct. It's the physical result and representation of this. Simply put, early chronic stress sucks the life force energy, aka metabolism, out of the body. It leaves us feeling constricted and helpless with little to no reserve for healing, self-confidence, and vitality. Now, of course, this all happens out of an innocent unknowing because parents just aren't informed and don't really understand that this little child is unable to soothe themselves on their own. So a child might be left alone in a full fight-flight mode because the parent themselves just don't have their own healthy nervous system regulation online to handle the stress in a calm manner. If our parents or our primary caretakers were not healthy, were not mentally stable and able to soothe themselves, then this really poses a problem for us as a child, as we then have no other option but to borrow and mimic what we learn from our parents and our caregivers. That the best thing to do in times of stress is to disconnect from yourself, emotionally suppress, and shut down. This is a very simple way to explain how traits are passed along in families when it comes to personality, when it comes to sensitivity, how we may hold ourselves in our body, the tone of voice and our facial gestures we make, and yes, even how PCOS appears to be genetic, but really it's rooted in an intergenerational trauma inheritance. And just know that there is good news in all of this, as there is a way to heal and prevent PCOS that is caused by early adversity and stress, and that medicine is 100% natural and already lives in our bodies, but we haven't been taught how to access it or even know that it exists. Also, for now, please know that your body is not broken. Your nervous system has gone into this state of self-protection and needing to guard and shut down a little because it had to. It was so smart to do that. It was intelligent to shut down. It was so brilliant to go into a fight-flight response and freeze because it was the only thing it knew how to do. But now that you are no longer in that unsafe situation, we want to show our system that it doesn't have to stay there, so you can get out of that survival mode and get back into the kind of real aliveness that we're all meant to be in.